Welcome to the Movies of the Damn podcast. My name is Kyle Grant, and I'm sitting here, as always, with my friend and published horror author, John Hunt. If you enjoy what you hear here today, please subscribe to our YouTube channel, check out our Facebook page, and follow us on both Instagram and Twitter, @DamnMovies. Email us any questions, comments, and suggestions to moviesofthedamned@gmail.com. For further details on John's published works, please visit his blog, johnhuntfiction.wordpress.com. Today, we'll be discussing Gerard Johnstone's 2014 horror comedy film, Housebound. The movie follows Kylie, who has just been sentenced to house arrest under the care of her mother. After numerous strange occurrences, Kylie comes to the belief that the house is actually haunted, which is further reinforced by the fact that a gruesome murder occurred in the house while it was previously a halfway house. Eventually, it's revealed that the house isn't haunted after all, but a man named Eugene is living in the walls. Together, they are ultimately able to figure out that psychologist Dennis committed the murder, and they end up killing him in self-defense. John, opening thoughts on the movie?
Yeah, how did you hear about this film?
I was on Shudder there, and I was just kind of scrolling through the different titles, and I don't even know what caught my eye, but it was just maybe the poster, but I clicked on it and like, oh, this kind of looks cool. And then, as you know, I go and I look at the reviews and I'm like, oh my gosh, this kind of has good reviews. Let's do it.
Did you know it was a horror comedy from the description on Shudder, or?
I can't remember now. I want to say yes, but I can't absolutely remember.
Okay. I really liked the opening. I thought that was a really good opening to a film. Like, couple of drug addicts trying to break into an ATM with a sledgehammer. I thought that was pretty interesting to watch.
So ridiculous, right? Because anyone who knows anything, like, these ATM machines are almost impossible to get into, right?
Yeah. Especially in the time frame that you're going to do it, right? So we've had people like tie chains around them and pull them out with heavy duty trucks.
Yeah.
But like you've seen that stuff happen in the news all the time too, right? And then they'll take it to a place where it's quiet, and then they'll have time to get into it.
Because you need time.
You need time. You definitely need time. But these guys, they did it in a totally different way, which was interesting. Yeah,
no, exactly, right? And it just showed to their addiction, right? Because it wasn't a smart plan. It was ridiculous what they were doing.
Yeah.
And they ultimately got caught, as they should have, because it was a ridiculous idea.
Absolutely. And I found it interesting, though. Like, she could have ran, but she didn't leave her friend behind.
And so what that was, it was good early character development, showing that even though she was an addict, even though she was a criminal, she wasn't necessarily like a terrible bad person.
No, she didn't leave her friend behind, even though she totally could have. She could have got out and run well before the police showed up.
Oh, definitely.
Right, and she was on camera, but like her face wasn't on camera. It was a very good covering, right? So
she likely could have gotten away scot-free.
It's possible, yeah. It just depends on how many police said responding to that type of event, but for sure. She for sure could have gotten away.
So then it kind of, you see that she gets caught, and they don't obviously show the sentencing or the trial or anything like that, but then the viewer learns that she's being sent for house arrest.
Yes.
And it's almost like the worst sentence she can get, because it's pretty obvious early on that her and her mother do not get along at all.
Yeah, she does not want to be there at all.
And so that's kind of when she's at the house, and then at first, she kind of hears her mom on some type of it was like a call-in radio show or something like that, talking about how she thinks the house is haunted and kind of is rolling her eyes at it, but then soon comes to the belief herself that she thinks the house is haunted.
Yeah, so it almost like wakens up old memories in her, because she said, something along the lines of, well, that was childhood, like, those are things for childhood. Like, I thought the house was haunted back then.
Yeah, because her mom brings up the fact, like, you laugh now, but you didn't used to laugh. This house used to petrify you, something like that.
Yeah. So, do you know what time period this was in?
Well, this film itself was released in 2014, and so in looking at it, I believe that it was set in present day.
Okay, and so in 2014, present day.
Yeah, like, so it would have been filmed in what, 2012, 2013 or something like that?
I was a little confused when she tried to get on the internet and she had to use a dial-up modem. Did you hear that noise?
Yeah, but like they were like a little bit kind of rural-ish.
I wouldn't say they were that rural, right?
Yeah,
but
yeah,
it was pretty funny. So I was like, what the hell? Like I was confused then. But then at the beginning when you see the ATM, you're like, no, that's present day technology. You could see that. And then the ankle bracelet, once again, present day technology. So I was like, this dial-up modem, what is this, right? But
it's an old house.
Yeah.
And it's her mother's house, and maybe the mom isn't like big into technological stuff, right? So
no, I like that actually sequence because it just reminded me of, back in the day when that's how it was. Like, I don't know if you ever remember that.
Oh, 100% I do.
But just hearing that, crank up, you're like, oh my God, I remember doing that all the time.
Brings up some memories.
Trying to get on MSN or web crawler.
But John, I love the way this thing was set up.
Okay.
Because we always go through this stupid decision and like ghost stuff starts happening. Why didn't you leave?
Yeah.
She can't leave.
She absolutely cannot leave.
Because she's had this ankle bracelet, and there's even the scene where they show her leaving and they like catch her right away.
Yes. Yeah.
So that was beautiful. And the other thing I love too is they showed her in one of the early scenes trying to use her cell phone.
Yeah.
And she was like out of minutes or something like that.
Yeah.
So I just thought I thought both those points were so smart, and it just played into how well set up this movie is to kind of pay off in the long run.
Really, it just takes a little time, like even just a line of dialogue, and you close off a lot of answers or close off a lot of inconsistencies that a lot of times you'd be a little angry with, right? So it's just simple attention to detail, and a little blurb like that solves a lot of issues down the road.
No, absolutely perfect. I can't say it better myself. One thing I wanted to ask you about, and I apologize because I likely missed it myself. The fellow who kind of installs the ankle bracelet on her.
Amos?
Amos.
Yeah.
Who kind of, I want to say, ends up teaming up with her because he seems to love paranormal stuff.
Yeah.
What is his job? Is he a police officer or is he a probation officer? Like, what is his gig?
I think his gig is just to monitor the bracelets.
He's just some regular dude who works for, like, an ankle bracelet company?
I guess so. It's in Australia, right? So they might have a different thing. Like, he's just supposed to verify that it works, and that he does a check to say, okay, has a person left, and then if not, then he notifies the police and they do a warrant. I don't even know. I have no idea.
Well, because it kind of confused me, right? And
Yeah.
like at first I thought he was like a police officer, and then on the scene where I guess she hadn't left, but her anklet thought she had left.
Yeah.
And I remember he shows up like with no uniform on, just himself. I'm like, if this is a police officer, this is ridiculous. There's no way that a police officer would be showing up off duty, let alone monitoring it off duty. But then I guess he isn't a police officer.
Well, what I thought more weird about that is also, this is just after the hand grabbed her ankle in the basement, right?
Yeah, that's right.
So it was right then, and then so she goes upstairs, and then she hears someone about to come downstairs, and we find out that it's Amos, right? My whole thing is like, what is he doing in their house?
Exactly.
Like, why isn't he knocking at the door, like, to check on it? Like, why would he be in the house? Like, you're just going to go into someone's house?
But then everything you just said to me makes that a little bit more believable. The fact that he isn't a police officer and he just kind of like works for this company or whatever. It's like he's a wannabe police officer, so he's going like above and beyond what someone should do. So it's almost like a Paul Blart mall cop type thing, where it's like going doing way too much. You know what I mean?
Well, the only, like, I had an issue with it because they didn't call him on it. Right? They didn't, what are you doing in my house? Like, that's fine, you're checking on the bracelet, but what are you doing in my house? Like, that's never okay.
No, and I hear what you're saying.
Right?
It's like they respected his authority, but he didn't really have any.
No, but then, once they explained what was going on and they saw how into it he was, they're like, they might have backed off on their queries because now here's someone that believes us.
Well, because he's useful to them at that point, right?
For sure.
And I thought that was kind of a cool twist that he like loves paranormal stuff, so he's like right in there right away. He's like, yeah, we need to set up cameras here and sensors and this. I
felt
and that.
there was like a lot of call outs to movies. You ever see that movie Disturbia?
Oh yeah, of course.
Right, so the ankle bracelet has to stay at home. Sees his neighbor murder someone.
Movie, by the way.
Great movie, Shia LaBeouf. He was really good. And then it also reminded me, that Disturbia reminded me of Rear Window. You ever see that movie?
I don't think so.
Hitchcock movie. The guy breaks his leg and he's like stuck in home, like he breaks it pretty bad.
Oh yeah.
Once again, he sees his neighbor murder someone and no one believes him, type thing, right? Or thinks his neighbor murdered someone, right? So it has like a little call out to that, I thought. And then you also have like some of the, when that guy realizes the paranormal stuff is there in the house and he wants to set up stuff, right? Like all the all the sound and whatever is trying to set the sense, the paranormal, whatever it was. That had like the levity and comedy of like The Conjuring when they do that stuff in those houses. There's
No, I hear what you're saying.
there's a bit of call outs to a couple of those movies, and they're always fun to watch. Like I thought this character was good, and he was fun to watch for sure. But I was immediately reminding me of those other films.
And that's a good point, and I didn't really think of that, but as you're going through it, yeah, it makes perfect sense. And so maybe this director here, his name again is Gerard Johnstone. Maybe he was big fans of those films, and he tried to kind of incorporate them into this one for kind of a little bit of a shout out.
Yeah, and maybe that's true. And it's just, there's, even though it was a horror comedy, like so in Tucker and Dale, I think is probably the best horror comedy.
Yeah, like Tucker and Dale makes me laugh out loud.
Yeah.
Like I couldn't say that I laughed out loud a ton in this movie. Like I
No.
might have got like a smirk or a smile here and there, but
Yeah.
it wasn't like a belly laugh type thing like Tucker and Dale.
But also, Tucker and Dale at no point whatsoever scared me.
No,
Right? But this movie had some parts that actually scared me.
really, because
Yeah.
it didn't really get me too much,
No?
which is so funny because it's usually the reverse where like
Exactly.
things scare me and they don't really get you. Like what parts in particular
That
like
damn
raised
teddy
your hair?
bear.
Okay, that it kept showing up in different spots,
Well,
right?
just like when it started to talk to her in the night, I was just like, oh, okay. Like you knew it was coming, and I felt it was coming, but it's just like, it's one of those things that it almost like, because it was a horror comedy, it let my guard down.
Okay.
So it wasn't like I wasn't expecting anything to be scary at all. I was expecting gore and some funniness, because that's usually what a horror comedy
It is usually what it is. And I guess one of the things that really attracted me to this movie, because as I said, stumbled across it on Shudder and then looked it up on Rotten Tomatoes. But kind of, you know how on Rotten Tomatoes they have like a little like maybe few sentence blurb on like the overall consensus on the movie?
Yep.
And so this one said something like, it's a rare horror comedy that delivers on both fronts.
Oh, that's
And
interesting.
so I'm like, oh, yeah, that's true, because you're right. Like, Tucker and Dale was very, very funny and did have gore, but it wasn't really scary.
No.
And so then I went into this with sky-high expectations, being like, I'm going to laugh, I'm going to be scared, this is going to be
Okay.
awesome. But I think
So you shored up your defenses.
yeah, but I think I just like kind of set myself up for failure, like I tend to do over and over again, where I go in with such high expectations and then I watch it, and I'm not saying this is a bad movie, it's a
No.
good movie, but I was expecting to be blown away and I kind of didn't get my socks knocked off.
Yeah, so I had no expectations. So I'll tell you, at the very beginning, I bought in. I was like, oh, this is cool. I like these guys trying to break into this ATM. This is pretty funny. Then you get you figure out that seems to be a good person, because she doesn't leave her friend behind, and so you're looking at it from that front, and then. But then it for me, it got like I stopped liking her. It got a little dry. She was very mean to her mom and her stepdad, right? So
Yeah, and they didn't really bring up like stepdad and mom like being awful to her. Like I could get it if she had resentment because they used to abuse her or they were mean to her and they did something mean in her childhood. But unless I missed it, I didn't really see that anywhere.
no, what I've seen to me is like she was a grown up, but she was a teenager.
Yeah,
right?
she was
So
just
it's
like annoyed with them, like they're not cool or something.
No, it's more like she didn't like any rules whatsoever. And if you ask her to help out at all, it's with an eye roll or whatever, right? And I have teenagers at home, and for the most part, they're good and they clean up after themselves or do whatever. But there are times when you're like, can you just like, they'll put their dish on top of the dishwasher.
Yeah.
And you're like, well, why don't you just put it inside? Because you just put it on top. You just open the door and you put it inside. Like then it's done. They're like, oh, like I just asked them to do like, multiple handstands or something, right? Like
I can't believe you, Dad. I'm so busy right now.
and then they go and lie on the couch and pick up their phone. You're like, what? What just happened, right? So she was like that as an adult.
When she ate the entire tray of meatloaf?
Oh my God, the meatloaf. And then when her parents were like, just wanted to watch Coronation Street on the TV that worked,
Yeah.
right? And just for like an hour that night. And she was just, turned it up when they went to talk to her more. I'm like, what is going on?
That might speak more so to the fact that maybe even though they didn't abuse her or were mean to her, they just weren't very good parents. Like they didn't set good boundaries. They didn't let her know like this is okay, this is not okay.
Yeah.
And maybe that led to the way she turned out. You know what I mean?
Well, I don't like that stuff, right? So we're at some point you got to be accountable for your own fucking behavior,
100%
right? So,
you do. But I'm just saying that perhaps that's how this all came together. This is they were kind of had her on a path and weren't doing a good job of reinforcing good behaviors and punishing bad ones.
Well, it just seemed like she just didn't want to do what she was told. right?
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
That was it. Like, and even like the simple stuff to help out around the house, like I think she was forgetting the entire context. You're not in jail because your mom let you stay at her house.
Yeah, it's like she should be grateful, but yet she was like annoyed.
Yeah, like it was a burden. Like
Yeah,
go
yeah,
to
yeah.
jail then, right? So I stopped that could be just me. I stopped liking her for that. Like I liked her at the beginning, but then it's like, with the way you're treating your family and you're not recognizing the situation that you're in. Like I don't have any empathy for you. I have no sympathy for you. Like I stopped liking her immediately. So it was hard to redress until later.
And you know what? I couldn't say that I loved her either. And maybe that was one of the reasons why I wasn't super in love with this movie, because I wasn't really rooting for someone. It was like I was just kind of watching and, oh, it's cool. Let's see what's happening here. And then it was just kind of over. The one thing that I noticed, though, is, and then maybe I misunderstood, but I'm positive that they, especially early on when she was getting sentenced, they talked about her being a drug addict, but yet you didn't really see her going through any withdrawals or anything like that.
Yeah, I don't know. So I don't know what the time period is from arrest to conviction, right? I know it's really long in Canada. So like maybe she potentially dried out in custody.
Oh, okay.
And then that was her sentencing, right? So she could have been in jail for a year for all we know. They didn't address it, you're right. So I don't know. It could have been like she was arrested the night before. We'll release you for this, right? But I don't know. So I think that's actually a hole that should have been plugged for sure.
No, even though she got arrested right at the start, there was like continual police involvement throughout the film.
Yeah.
And one thing that I thought was really funny is that when she went to the police station to make the report,
Yeah.
and she's like talking at a mile a minute and talking about all this stuff, and then the police officer just like, all he got was like the first line about the vacuum.
Yeah.
And then, sorry, what did you say after that? Where she had like kind of already explained the entire thing. I actually kind of laughed at that.
I like that too. It's like he sits down, he goes, okay, well, you'll need to make a statement then. And he starts typing out sets up the report, and she's like clearly in distress. There's clearly an emergency going on. He's like, do. I thought that was pretty good.
No, it's funny stuff. And then the movie kind of takes like some weird turns, right? When they figure out kind of that there's murder happened at the house when it was a halfway house.
Yeah.
And they think it's the neighbor, but it's not the neighbor. And he kind of leads them on the track to finding Eugene.
Yeah. Well, there's a lot of different, I guess, horror movie tropes in this. Like, so you got to look at, so now it goes, so it's paranormal now. It's a ghost story. It was always a ghost story, but like, now it's like help the ghost find her killer. Right, like it's
like
almost
like a changeling, or
like it's almost in every book or movie. Like there's some sort of something like that, right? They go through that, and like I said earlier, they were going through the rear Disturbia thing. And there's a lot of different influences from other movies in this movie. I felt, anyways. I don't know if it was intentional or not, but then you go to that whole Eugene, which also reminded me of People Under Stairs, and there's a lot of stuff in here that seems to be taken from other movies. But at the same time, I still enjoyed it. It was still done in a good way, so I didn't really have a real issue with that. But you're right. And then it went to like the characteristic. I guess you would call him like the redneck. That's where they find Eugene, right? It's through the redneck who has a junkyard around his house and it doesn't clean up, and he's just
like he looks like the guilty guy. It's like, oh yeah, this guy did it.
Yeah,
for sure,
right? So he's the Boo Radley, right?
Yes.
So
don't judge a book by its cover.
Yeah. So they do all that, and then I do have to say, like, she reached into his mouth to pull out that denture
The
plate.
dentures, yeah.
I was like, what? I was like,
strange, right?
Well, okay, the guy's sleeping on the couch. It's one thing if he was knocked unconscious or whatever, but you're reaching in his mouth to pull out something that clips into his teeth.
Yeah, there's no way he doesn't wake up.
Yeah.
Right?
So second thing, you're reaching into a man's mouth.
Bite your hand off.
Right? It's just gross also, right? That's the whole other thing,
you're
right?
looking at it from a germ standpoint.
Well, just gross in general, right? I don't put my hands in people's mouths in general, do you?
I hear you.
So I just thought that was pretty interesting. And they also had the shrink, being the killer. Like there's a lot of stuff borrowed from this and from other movies in this film. But once again, I still liked how it all played out. I just had a hard time getting to like that main character again. And I find
Kylie.
and I find if you don't like the main character, it's hard to like the movie overall unless it was set up at the very beginning for you to be that character that you love to hate.
Now, do you think maybe it was set up in the fact so that she could have a redemption story? So that you could see her changing throughout and becoming a better person?
I don't know if that actually happened here. Like almost everything that she did was for herself.
Yeah, no, I hear you. I hear you.
Right.
But you're right though. Like your comment about she was like a teenager in an adult's body.
Yeah.
And I almost like see that at the end, which I actually like the very final scene when she like something wasn't working or whatever, and then she just yells. She's like, Eugene, like
Yeah.
that's something like a kid would do, right?
Yeah,
like
yeah.
if her like little brother like
Yeah.
took something that was hers or something like that,
Yeah.
right? Like,
yeah. No, and yeah, that was good too. It's good that though. I think they're just more trying to show that they let Eugene stay, and it was
that
fine.
he,
right?
he became like a member of the family,
Yeah,
a member
yeah.
of the household or whatever.
Yeah. Although I thought that what was it? What went through the guy's chest? Like that seemed pretty fatal to me.
Through the guy's chest.
Through Eugene's chest. Like remember the shrink?
Oh, yeah,
It almost looked
he got stabbed or
yeah, but it looked like it popped out through the front of his chest, and I was like, okay.
Yeah, and that would be tough too, right? Like to bring him to the hospital. It's like we got some explaining to do. Yeah, we don't really know this guy, but he like lives in our walls. Like, but the one thing that I didn't like, and maybe you like this, but like as soon as you got to see Eugene, I thought he just looked ridiculous. Like he didn't look scary. He was just like it was weird.
When he was chasing her through the house, he looked pretty scary.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think so anyways. I don't you might have a different thing on
but
it.
He's just like so pale. It's like they like threw like baking powder on him. Or
yeah, when you got to see more of him in the light. So at the very beginning when you saw him was more subdued. You didn't see too much of him. But when he starts talking to him and interacting with him, you get to see the extent of the special effects, and it did look like they just threw baking powder on him for sure, or baby powder.
Baby
for sure.
powder, yeah.
Yeah.
I don't know. So I didn't love that. I did love how the psychologist. I think the psychologist's name was Dennis. How they end up killing him.
Yeah.
With like the
God.
electric. I don't even know what it was. They like stuck a fork into his head or whatever.
Yeah.
Sent a pulse of electricity and his head exploded. I'm like,
Yeah.
I don't know if I've seen that before.
No. It was pretty interesting for sure, in the way it hit the mom's face.
Yeah.
She didn't look too impressed with
and
that.
I really liked the mom as a character. I thought she was
She
funny.
was great.
I thought it was written well and it was acted well, where she was almost like the stereotypical like embarrassing mom.
Yeah,
just like
for
kind of
sure.
like caught in her generation and hasn't kept up with the world.
Yeah.
And just like I just thought it
Stuck in her routines, and
it-
this is the way she
yeah.
likes things. Yep, for
just
sure.
made a lot of the stuff she did, a lot of stuff she said, just kind of made me smile and like roll my eyes a little bit. I'm like, oh, she's such a mom type of thing.
I gotta tell you though, I really liked that whole fight sequence with the shrink, man. Like, remember she used a cheese grater on his face?
Yeah,
I was like, oh my
yeah.
god.
It was-
I thought that was pretty interesting. And then when they were locked in that bathroom, and Eugene almost pops open the door, and they start to slide through there.
Yeah.
But before that, he's like using that saw to cut through the door. And
Yeah.
before he uses a saw, he puts on safety goggles and ear protection.
Well, safety first, John. Come
When
on.
he's about to kill all these people in the house, he makes sure to do that. I like some of that stuff. I thought it was pretty funny. Like little small details, right? I like those.
Or when again, what's the fella's name? Amos.
Yeah.
Amos doesn't know that the shrink is bad.
Yeah.
And like hands him like the weapon or something like that.
Well, hey, I need something to get through this wall, to break through this wall here. Turns
Yeah.
around, and the shrink was holding a knife about to stab him. He
Yeah.
just grabs it out of his hand like it was nothing, right?
Yeah, he
Like,
grabs it out of his hand and he's like, no, this won't work, and
Yeah.
hands it back to him. And so there were a lot of clever things, and maybe I was just being too hard on this movie, but just like, again, my expectations didn't necessarily meet reality, but that's my problem. That's no one's else's. I just went in with real sky-high expectations.
yeah. So, yeah, that is like, I wouldn't say this was a great film, but it wasn't terrible. That's for
If you
sure.
ask the critics, they say it was great.
Yeah.
Like right now on Rotten Tomatoes, the critic score is 95.
That's really high.
42 reviews.
Holy cow.
Which isn't like obviously like the first run blockbusters get way more reviews, but it's still a lot, right?
I just like how the title had a double meaning. It almost had the part of the answer to the story in it. So she was housebound because of her ankle bracelet,
Yeah,
and Eugene was housebound.
because he loves living in walls.
Well, he just can't see outside. He has that. What is that? I forget the phobia it's called. Agoraphobia. He couldn't go outside,
Okay, yeah.
so he was housebound.
No,
So
that's
I thought
cool.
that was interesting. Like I didn't, until he saw Eugene, I was like, oh, that's really interesting. But they were playing him up like a people under the stairs person at first.
Yeah, definitely. Rotten Tomatoes audience score 73.
Yep.
And it, when I'm looking at it, critics 95, audience 73. I'm probably closer to 73.
I'm like a 70.
Yeah?
Yeah, I'm a 70 on this one. There were some good moments, but once again, it was hard to get. Once they made her out to be who she was, I didn't like her, and it took a lot to get her back. It wasn't. She didn't come back to me until she was fighting with the shrink, really, until the very end, until when they were all fighting with the shrink.
And then you kind of...
Then I'm on her side, and I'm fine with her, right?
The again, going back to that point that they said there, that it's a horror comedy that delivers on both fronts.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, it did have both, and it probably had more scares than a typical horror comedy.
Mm-hmm.
But having said that, it didn't have as good of scares as a straight horror movie.
No, it's not. Yeah, so...
And it also wasn't as funny as typical horror comedies. So even though it did have both, it was also lacking in both, if what I'm saying is making sense.
Well, yeah, it does make sense, but I also think that I thought this was more comedy. The comedy was more dry. You know what I mean?
You're right.
So
you're right. More observational, dry. Yeah.
So it's like almost like What We Do in the Shadows, right? With that, but What We Do in the Shadows was pretty goddamn hilarious.
I thought if we're comparing the two, it's Shadows is heads and tails better than this one.
Yes, for comedy, for sure. But I just meant like the style was a dry humor, and it's almost like, if you're not paying attention, you're gonna miss half of it, right? So
no, you're right. You're right.
And you know, for a horror comedy, like I don't know how much attention you're gonna pay it, right? Like it's not something that draws you in and thinks, I need to watch every second of this, right? So this is just that type of genre.
Interesting. One thing that I did find, and I don't know if this is still true or not, John. In 2015, there were talks that they were going to make a U.S. remake for this movie.
Oh.
But that's 5 years ago now, and I haven't really heard anything since or seen anything. So maybe that never got realized. I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know. It would be a good one to do again. That's for sure.
No, for sure. And just to obviously things would be a little bit different with the different culture, right?
Yeah, for sure. And once again, I'm not really a big fan when they do that, anyways. So,
well, generally the original is going to be better, right?
Mm-hmm. I agree. And generally you don't need to redo it, right? Generally, but sometimes it's worked out excellent. So, it's hard to say, right?
I couldn't find anything on budget or box office or anything like that.
Mm-hmm.
Don't have anything in that area. We've said it a couple of times. It's on Shudder, so for those of you with Shudder, check it out.
It's worth the watch, man.
I was
just
so. About to say that. You took the words right out of your mouth. It's worth the watch. Might not knock your socks off, but again, if you're tuned in, if you're paying attention, like John said, you are going to have a few chuckles here and there, and there are some okay scary parts.
Mm-hmm, for sure. I think so anyways.
Well, buddy, anything else to add about this one?
No, not this time.
Well, folks, please subscribe to our YouTube channel, check out our Facebook page, and follow us on both Twitter and Instagram @DamnMovies. We want to hear what you thought of today's podcast and any suggestions you have, especially in terms of what movies you would like us to discuss next. Send us an email to moviesofthedamned@gmail.com. Please also check out John's full-length novels. His first two novels, Dollhouse and The Tracker, are Amazon bestsellers. You can also order his novella Balance, his book of short stories, 4 Shots of Horror, and his newest novel, Off the Grid. Right now, all available on Amazon. For further details on John's other published works, please visit his blog, johnhuntfiction.wordpress.com. Thanks for listening, and we'll see you next time.
Hey everyone, thanks for listening. And if you happen to be in Texas the first weekend of May, me and Kyle will be there too. We'll be at the Texas Frightmare 2020 weekend. We'll be walking around, probably wearing Movies of the Damned t-shirt. I'll be on an author panel for horror. And so if you want to pop by and maybe ask some questions about that, please, more than welcome. And I'd be very, very flattered and honored to see you. So, that being said, everyone, have a great week. Be kind to everyone.